Okay, let's call ourselves to order, a meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen. It's 7:03, June 22nd. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by remote participation. The go-to-meeting access code is 242-554-413. Okay. The first thing I'd like to mention is we have a couple of vacancies on a couple of committees that do work in the summer, do some important, especially at the end of the fiscal year, do some important work. So we're looking for people to volunteer for the FinCom and the Capital Improvements Committee, other ones too, but especially the FinCom, because they do work in July, and it would be great if we had some volunteers for that committee. We're losing a couple of people, which is unfortunate. The next thing, tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., the login information is on the town website. We'll be having an informational forum about Saturday's outdoor town meeting. I think it's very worthwhile. There'll be people there available online to answer questions about the warrant articles, about the budget, and even just sort of the nuts and bolts of how the meeting is going to work. Because of the 40B article on the second special town meeting warrant, I would estimate that there will be some people that haven't been to town meeting before. So it's a complicated dance, and that there are certain procedures that everyone has to follow. So those questions could also be answered. Could be answered then by people who haven't been to town meeting, and people that have questions about how the outdoor town meeting is going to work and how it might be different from our usual town meeting. We can also answer some of those questions. So I hope that we can get a lot of the things that might be asked at town meeting taken care of beforehand, because basically we're trying to make this meeting run as smoothly as possible and as quickly as possible, because we're still trying to social distance and keep everyone safe. Anything else, Angus?
No, that covers it well. It's going to be very highly worthwhile. So if people are available, they should definitely tune in. And it is going to be rebroadcast later this week on local cable and the town's YouTube channel. I would just note that the reason we're using Zoom for tomorrow night's meeting instead of the usual go-to-meeting is it has a slightly higher call participant capacity. It can handle up to 300 people instead of 250. I'd be surprised if we hit that number, although it'd be great if we did. But in case people wondered why we used a different platform, that's why.
Thank you. The Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness listening session will be held June 25th at 7 p.m. Again, the details are on the website. Rick, do you want to give us a little more on that?
Sure. Yeah, we're going to review the process and the results. So there's not a whole lot more to say about it at this point. It will speak for itself on Thursday, but we'll explain what the process was to look at our climate vulnerabilities and assess our strengths and weaknesses and how we might address the weaknesses or reinforce the strengths. And then there's a set of outcomes from there.
Great. And this would, Rick, not necessarily just the people that participated before. This is for anybody.
Absolutely, yeah. No, the more people that listen to it that haven't participated, the better. Those who were at the workshop, certainly the core team knows what's, the whole background. Those who participated in the workshop on February 29th are pretty much up to speed, and if they've read the conclusion, then they are fully up to speed. So this is really to help other people understand what we learned.
Is that conclusion, Rick? This is Glenn. Is that conclusion anywhere? Is that on that click here on that piece of paper so we can read it ahead of time, or is the conclusion going to be presented for the first time on Thursday?
Actually, the final report is, I believe it's up on the MVP website now. So the full report is there, which is, I don't know, 50 plus or minus pages total. And there, the conclusion, there's an executive summary and the, conclusion in that document. Yeah.
I want to add another announcement. The Pentucket Arts Foundation, which had been planning to have kind of a drive-by arts festival on or around the 4th of July, that has been changed. I think I see Jen's logged in here somewhere. Jen, are you there? Can you give us a little more information on? I read the thing, but it was kind of confusing, I have to say.
Sorry about that, Archie. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Great. Yeah, so we wish that we could have done that reverse parade, but it was just too much for our group to take on. So we're attaching ourselves to a project by the Essex County Community Foundation. It's a place and space to find meaning in your local communities. And just what we're asking folks to do is to take a moment to identify a place of culture within the community that has meaning for them. And the ECCF is putting together a map of all the different cultural assets within the selected group of towns that they're asking to do it. And you can go on to our website at www.pentucketarts.org to get all the links and stuff. I won't take up any more of your time with that, but anybody who wants to participate, it's free and it's easy. You can upload a picture of a trail that you find is meaningful, or an event that you find is meaningful, a place of culture that helps you connect with the community. It might be the food mart, it might be whatever, however you describe it. There's no wrong answer. So just thanks for giving me a chance to speak about that. The deadline is June 30th, and we ask anybody who's interested to please participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Remember to keep up on all the things that are going on. Subscribe to the town news and announcements on the town. You can do that on the town website. The first item on the agenda is the sale of bond anticipation notes and the process therefore, and this is related to funding for the water projects. Angus, can you fill us in? So we've selected a company to. We had bidders on that, and we went with one, and that's as far as. And so basically, we just have to sign off on that. Is that correct?
That's right. Hilltop Securities, our financial advisor, has been managing the process for us in consultation with my office and with the town treasurer, and they have awarded the $1.1 million bond anticipation note, subject to the board's approval, to Piper Sandler and Company, based on a 2% interest rate and a premium of just short of $14,000. So what this would do is carry forward the financing for the two water capital projects currently under construction, namely the Break Hill water tank and the new treatment building associated with the bedrock well. So this would be payable next July in 2021. And the form of vote, if the board is in agreement, begins on page 4 of your packet. And due to the length of the vote, Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be sufficient if the board made a motion based on the written form of vote included in the packet rather than reading the whole thing.
That was going to be my question. If we had to read that whole back page, well, actually, there's more than that. Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Angus, is this something that the Financial Advisory Board looks at and stuff like that, or they don't get into that? Because I highly respect what they do.
No, they really don't. You're saying the Investment Policy Committee or the Finance Committee?
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry, the Investment Policy Committee.
No, they really don't. This is borrowing. That's to do with investments.
And now, can I ask one question? So, I guess if you figure it out, never mind. Or is it just an example? So the NIC, then that must be an acronym for net interest cost. But then it looks like it's spread out that they're different, but then the weighted average is the same as the lowest. I just don't know anything about it, and that, I mean, I don't mean to throw a weird question like that out, but I mean, look, if you guys are all happy with it, and are obviously Hilltop Securities, who's working for the town, is happy with it, I have no problem. But I was just curious. I can ask that at a different time. But do you see what I mean by that?
Glenn, I think you're right. The NIC column is the for some reason they call it a 2% rate, and then they give us a discount, and it ends up being 0.7. So that's actually the lowest interest rate.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Archie. That answers it. So is that actually like would that be good enough, Angus? That, make a motion?
Based on the written form of the motion in the board packet.
Yeah, I'm trying to look.
I think there was a question to Mike, and I see Mike's microphone is on. So Mike, could you comment on that? Is that adequate for us to reference the?
Sure. Is the board, can certainly say I move that the board accept the vote for the bond anticipation notes as set forth on page 4 of the Selectmen's packet of
Perfect.
June
That's what I was
22nd,
looking for.
2022.
I don't see a page number on mine, so that's what I was asking. Some type of reference point.
Bottom right-hand corner, Glenn.
Well, actually,
No.
each of you have a slightly different printed packet because we had such problems with the copier on Friday and Sunday.
Mine says A up in the right-hand, top right-hand corner.
That's the right page, Glenn. But yeah, one of the 3 packets I printed before putting page numbers on, and then I forgot, and I didn't intend to use it, but then because the copier wasn't working, I ended up using it. So Glenn, it sounds like you got the short straw and you got the one without page numbers.
No, some of them do have page numbers too. Okay, never mind. 'Cause I mixed it up
Because only
early
half
when I
the
was
packet would print and the copier kept.
Yeah. So why doesn't somebody else make the motion that has page numbers on it then, just to make sure it's right?
Time out, 1 second. We forgot to at the last meeting or the previous 2 meetings. Did we elect a clerk? Because it has to be signed by the clerk of the Board of Selectmen.
I don't believe we do. We did do that. The board designated you as chair, but did not make any other designation.
So I was clerk last year, and I don't know if that technically can carry on, seeing as we didn't make a change, but
Well, yeah, you're the clerk until we make a change.
okay.
Right?
Okay.
What, Mike, is that something?
Yeah, that's fine. He continues to be the clerk until you vote him out.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I've been looking for you to vote me out of that. Just kidding.
Doesn't seem like heavy lifting because this is the first time it's come up though.
Good job.
in the whole year.
It's a good job, Rick.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll make, well, somebody, Rick, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, as stated, on page 4 of the, Selectmen meeting packet for, June,
I think you get deep points too.
It's got to be 4 and 5, I think.
June 22nd, yeah, page 4, well, it barely carries on to page 5. The signature
Mhm.
only page 5. So page 4 and 5 of the Selectmen's packet for the June 22nd, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Wait a minute, Rick?
Yeah.
And say, I incorporate them herein, in this motion. Incorporate what's written there in herein.
Okay, and incorporate them herein.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor? Archibald, aye.
Parker, aye.
Now, when do you need us to come by and sign that?
It's actually not particularly time sensitive because it doesn't close until mid-July. So we can bring these for signature on Saturday at town meeting.
No, it just says, it just Rick.
Yeah,
There are some other documents.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because I'm here. I'm in the parking lot because my Wi-Fi is better. Can you imagine? Sitting in the parking lot in my car, close to the public town, the public one at town meeting, than in my home.
Okay, next item is the discussion of the consideration for reducing the quorum requirements for the annual and special town meetings as was approved recently by legislation passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. So informally, at the last meeting, we discussed this, and it was pretty much agreed that and agreed to by suggested by the moderator that we go with a quorum of 40 for this particular town meeting. And I would ask for a motion in that, and if anyone has any new information would like to change that, or we can just go right ahead and vote on the quorum being 40.
okay, I'll make a motion.
Hold on for what? Does it have to be the whole page again, Mike? This seems to be a big motion. Or can we just say 40?
Glenn, I think I can handle it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to follow the similar model that we just used.
Okay.
I move that in accordance with the provisions of Section 7 of Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2020, with the advice and consent of the town moderator, that the board votes to change the quorum for the annual town meeting, the special town meeting number 1, and the special town meeting number 2 to 40 registered voters.
Second.
Further discussion? If Mike agrees that that's okay, all in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Sorry about that, Rick. I just have 2 different papers in mind that aren't done, so I just had questions.
Yeah, no problem.
So Mike, are we good on that?
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. The next step is that I have to send a letter to the Attorney General, and which I already prepared, incorporating this vote. So you're good.
I have a question that probably should have come up during discussion. We had to post it 7 days out just to inform the public and take any comment. Did anybody get back to us or anything like that about?
The idea was that you posted it to this date, that it would be open for comment. Meaning it wasn't something like that.
Okay.
The
I got
notice said that the public's invited to attend and participate in this discussion.
Gotcha. So I guess nobody did. Wow.
I would note that this is a very helpful vote in terms of helping. Obviously, nothing is certain nowadays, but it helps improve the likelihood that we will go forward with town meeting, and most particularly the approval of an FY21 budget. Stephanie, our town accountant, and I had a call earlier today with Mass Department of Revenue, and they're very eager to see either budgets approved or this so-called 1/12 budget voted by the Board of Selectmen. So reducing the quorum requirement reduces one potential barrier to budget approval. So I definitely thank the board for this vote. Personally, I don't have any question that we would hit 40. I don't really have a question that we'd hit 90, but because there's so much at stake, especially in terms of the budget approval, having that reduced quorum is a plus.
It is, but I think it's a plus too, because it's going to be 88, the hottest day, if you look at the weather. So we need to make sure people prepare for it. Maybe people might show, but then they might not be able to stand the heat and might leave. But it's going to be the hottest day this week. But no rain, so that's a good thing.
Okay. Next article is a review of the motions for the special and annual meetings. How do we want to go about this? I'll read the article. I don't think we need to read the whole motion unless someone has an objection to it.
I would ask if the moderator has read all the motions and if she had any questions. If she doesn't have any questions on the motions and she feels they're good motions, then we can go forward.
That's a good question, Glenn. Casey, are you good with things?
Yes, I did read all of the motions, and I think that they're all appropriate.
So I would suggest just to move on then, or do we have to vote them, or we don't have to vote them? I mean, if this meeting was always set up to make sure that we have, that our motions are in line with what Casey wanted, and they're legal with Mike, and I think they're all good with us. I read them. I had no questions on them.
I do have one question, though. I only have motions for the annual town meeting and not for the special town meeting.
Oh, the special town meeting motions were, Mike emailed those around on Thursday.
Sorry, I looked and I didn't see them, so.
Could we resend them to her and then go back to that later on? Or do you want us? Do you like to have them in front of you, or would you mind us just reading them to you? You probably like them in front of you.
Actually,
Yeah, I can forward them again.
there are only 9. I'm
Yeah.
going to mute myself for a minute and check my Thursday email and see if I missed something. I didn't see them, but and I did look for them, but I will. So can we just come back to this later on after I have a chance to see?
Sure, I just forwarded that again, Casey. It was sent Thursday at 9:46 a.m.
Okay, well, I probably just missed it, but let's see. Well, I should probably stick around for item D.
Mm-hmm.
There is one discussion item that might give you a breather, Casey, that the board could chew on. Which is, Archie, unless I'm missing something, the only article I'm aware of that the board has not yet taken a recommendation on is the citizen petition article on the second special town meeting. Other than that, we have board positions and everything.
So the amount of money that the special citizens petition was requesting for additional funds to provide legal advice and consultants and so forth to the town related to the 40B application requested $250,000, but that we don't necessarily have to from free cash, and the Board of Selectmen or the FinCom or anybody don't necessarily have to. That's not set in stone. We could approve that. We could approve 0. We could approve a lesser amount. And I think one thing we would like to do is not have a 2-hour filibuster about that at a town meeting, especially at noon time, and as Glenn says on a hot day. So I think a couple of the people from the petition and a couple of people from the FinCom and I and Angus talked about this afternoon. No agreement was made to any kind of figure, and so that is up in the air. I would ask the other two board members if what their feeling was. My feeling was that the amount, it's certainly the amount of 250,000 is way too much, and with the amount that will be available already from monies that we can apply to, that the zoning board of appeals can get from the developer, will be very adequate for getting consultants on us. The only thing we can't get coverage for is any kind of legal fees going forward. So
Archie, do you think, I thought we were gonna have a discussion about this.
I don't know
Saturday.
what number to pick. We don't know how much legal fees we're going to need ultimately, but Angus can.
Will we have better information by Saturday?
But John Whitten gave us some information on things this afternoon, and his feeling was that 250,000 was nowhere near, was way too much, that we certainly didn't need that much. His feeling was more like in the range of, in the first year, maybe 40 to 50,000 for just the first year. Am I correct, Angus? Is that?
That's right. And if you bear with me, I can just kind of summarize. He talked about different town strategies on this similar issue, and he did acknowledge there are some towns. He cited Stoneham as one example that had voted to appropriate $250,000, which he described more as in his words, war chest, rather than actually necessarily needing that amount. And he did walk through the different stages of the 40B process and what might be a reasonable or even conservative estimate of potential legal fees at each stage. He said for the ZBA hearing process, which he thought could take up to a year, a legal cost in the range of $35,000 to $40,000 should be more than adequate. In the event that a comprehensive permit were to be appealed by the town and to the Housing Appeals Committee, he thought that could cost an additional $40,000 in review. And I believe that is because it was essentially a de novo appeal, so starting from scratch. And he said in his experience, if a Housing Appeals Committee decision was further appealed to the Superior Court, that could take roughly another $20,000. And he said that would be a lower amount because the Superior Court would be reviewing what's already on the record. So all in, over the course of 3 to 5 or more years, he thought a budget in the range of $100,000 would be more than sufficient in his experience.
And those numbers are 2020 numbers, or are they 2023 numbers? Did he take for inflate? Did he realize that things are going to go up, and his hourly rates probably go up every year, and so that would be adequate? That was taken into consideration.
I don't believe they were adjusted for inflation.
Well, I don't know about inflate. It's just
Yep.
I want to make sure that if something could go 3 to 5 years, he gives us a number of $100,000. That those aren't 2020 numbers. Those are extrapolated over 3 to 5 years to make sure that we have enough. Because I would hate to say we're $10,000 short at the end, and we have to make decisions because we don't have enough money rather than making good decisions because we have that extra little bit of money. That's all. I just wanted to make sure. That's it. But what's wrong? I mean, can we discuss it more, or you think that's a good discussion and we could vote on that amount tonight? Or do you think we should, we're going to have a posted meeting, a town meeting, correct?
Yeah, people, the people from the 40B organization were going to talk back with recommendations they got from their legal counsel, and maybe get back to Angus tomorrow or the next day, and so we all thought the idea, the whole idea is so we don't have again an hour or 2 hour discussion about this at the meeting. Maybe we could all agree, and so the FinCom, I believe, was planning to vote the morning of town meeting, and maybe we could do the same if there's some additional information forthcoming.
So Archie, let me just make sure I understand that right.
So we have some reasonable information from John Whitten already, and enough that we could, make a reasonable movement forward now. Based on what I just heard, it sounds like within the next 12 months that we would not exceed $50,000 in the worst case.
That's what John Whitten felt.
Yeah,
so I make a motion that we propose at town meeting $50,000.
Hi, this is Nathan Kelly from the Finance Committee. Can I speak for a minute, please?
Yeah, Nathan.
Well, hold on. He's in the middle of a motion, though, Nathan.
Okay.
Well, if nobody wants to second, that's fine.
No, I'll second it so we can have discussion. That's fine. Okay.
Absolutely. And Nathan, please speak up.
Sure. So I heard what John had to say, and I think there's two different ways that a motion could be recommended on this. I think you could make a motion for $50,000 for a 1 year, a sunset date of the end of fiscal year 2021, or what I think is also a good option is to recommend $80,000 with a sunset date of the end of fiscal year 2022. I think that number makes sense based on what John had said. It also makes it so 2 years from now we'll be able to see where things are at in the process, and we wouldn't necessarily have to ask for money 12 months from now or whatever it is, 10 months from now, but we would certainly know where things are at. And so I think $80,000 with a sunset of 2022 is a smart choice.
But then, Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Sure.
And what if the process is not over with by 2022? And this was the intent of the article and the people that were, that brought forth the article.
It certainly might not be. It might not be over after 2 years from now. It could be 10 years from now. But it doesn't make sense to tie up $250,000, $150,000, even $100,000 in free cash for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years when we can reapproach this issue in a prudent way 2 years from now.
I agree with everything you said, Nathan, but do the petitioners agree with that? And I think we're trying to get it to common ground so we don't have an hour-long discussion. And
Well, that's Glenn. They seemed like they might go there. That was.
I just wasn't a part of that conversation. So, but something that you said, Archie, that stuck out to me was you said something that they were going to talk to their lawyers, the ones that they kind of got some initial numbers from, and then they were going to give those to or have a conversation with Angus, and then they were going to try to mesh our numbers with their numbers. What happens if their numbers come back, 120, and then we have that long discussion, and they don't want to move, and they have every right not to, if they don't want to, and then we had that hour-long discussion.
We didn't resolve that.
Okay.
Angus, am I got it right or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think given that the objective here is to see if there is a form of motion that would be agreeable both to the petitioners, the Board of Selectmen, and ideally FinCom as well, although obviously we can't speak for them and they haven't convened as a quorum since this issue was submitted. But given that the idea is to kind of get everyone on the same page to streamline the actual process of town meeting, and given that we do expect a response from the petitioners in the next day or two, and we don't know what that will be. We know what it might be, but we don't know what it will be. I actually would recommend that the board spend whatever time you need tonight talking about it, but I would recommend taking a vote on Saturday because before then you won't have complete information. Whereas if you take a vote tonight on some number and then you get new information and you change your minds, that could create real confusion on the floor of town meeting if, for instance, that is picked up in the press and then changes.
I would agree. Because
Okay,
I
I have no problem with that. I mean, and I can withdraw my motion. I guess, and this is somewhat a response to what Nathan had suggested. It strikes me that we should try to take this one fiscal year at a time. And who knows where this is really going to go. You know, the applicant may come in with something that is rejected out of hand right at the start because it will have exceeded the large project threshold, you know, and will not suit local needs. And, you know, based on of course, we don't know what to believe, but based on the feedback so far, it almost seems likely that that's what they're going to do. It puzzles me, but
Oh, if that's the case, that's a great point, Rick. If that's the case, can somebody answer the question then? If we don't need it anymore, do we have to wait till the sunset clause is done, or can we take a vote and maybe put that in the motion? That how does that work, Mike? And we maybe take a vote. Can the selectmen then say that it's it's done and that gets zeroed back into free cash? Because that's a great point, Rick.
What was it? We have in the past basically rescinded any, not the motion, but basically, put a motion in there to put money back from unspent articles. In other circumstances, we've just closed out the account. Given this one, I would suggest that if you wanted to do it, that you would actually have an article at a town meeting closing out the account if you didn't need it anymore, if you didn't have a sunset clause in there.
Rick, this is Nathan Kelly. Can I speak to your point?
yeah, please. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with you that I think ideally it would be dealt with year to year. That's why I told you two proposals, 1 year, $50,000, 2 years, $80,000, which is right in line with the timeline of spending that Mr. Whitten had said. I think that when speaking to the petitioner, he was a little frustrated about the idea of, 1 year having to, come back and do it all again. That's where I tried to come up with a compromise suggestion of 2 years, $80,000. That kept in line with the financial recommendations or the financial expected costs, and that we would have a much clearer things from a legal perspective at where things are at 2 years from now as well.
Okay. Thanks.
I agree with that, Nathan, but we're trying to get to common ground with them.
I know that, and I think that 80 for two, 80 and 2 is the common ground.
I think they have the votes to pass this, so we just.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
and that's
so
where
we
I
just
think
have to.
80,
Yeah.
And I tried to explain to him how having $250,000 hung up in this account is not good for the town either. And where based on the recommendations of the costs that we were given, that it is prudent to say $80,000 is the smart amount for 2 years, and then we come back in 2 years and say where are things at with this, because there's going to be a lot of development legally that occurs in the next 2 years.
So I would say then, I would rather take a vote on Saturday, but a motion that I would make tonight, if they weren't trying to get other numbers from other lawyers, then it will muddy the waters, would be, I would recommend up to $80 for two, and it would be sunsetted in 2 years. That sounds reasonable. And hope, and that's a common ground. And if I had to go to 100 to make them happy, I would do it, because they have the votes for this, I think. And we just want to try to make it work with them as best we possibly can.
I would agree with Glenn on both of those. I would rather do 80, but if we had to go to 100 to get everybody all on board, then I could do that too.
Mm-hmm. And I think early on, the petitioners mentioned that, they didn't know a number, but they just wanted to start, and they knew that they couldn't go any, they could go lower, but they couldn't go higher. So I think that 250 was kind of an unrealistic number, and it was obviously we're getting some refined numbers now. But what I'm nervous about, if their lawyers or whomever's talking to them come back to Angus and say, "Oh no, we need 160," and then it's going to be the hour-and-a-half talk on town meeting floor.
There was some coordination, however, between John Whitten and this other law firm. So they I don't know, they used to work together or something. So it's not necessarily that they would be at competing interests. John Whitten was quite strong in his feeling that we absolutely should not go overboard and have a big giant pot of money. He thought it was a bad idea.
Great.
So we have a motion on the floor for now I've forgotten the amount. What you said, 50?
$50,000.
I said 50, but then I offered to withdraw the motion after listening to what Nathan had to say and taking this all into account. Perhaps we would be better off waiting until Saturday morning when we have more information. If we are we able to meet for 15 minutes Saturday morning before town meeting, and come to a resolution on it.
Right. Each one of us will be in a different tree, right?
So what about obviously Angus does a good job getting information from us. Just if we reach out to Angus and after this, they come back to him tomorrow. So we have all of those questions. So we have a good understanding. So it's not a huge discussion between us three, that we're generally on the same boat, or at least, have the information that from the other lawyers and from Angus beforehand.
Well, I think we're all pretty close already, depending upon what they say. Yeah. Angus, do you think did they say they would get back to you tomorrow, or?
Well, I mean, you heard the same thing I did. I think that is their intent, but given it's, I think it's a large and somewhat informal coalition. I think Don Doak, the lead petitioner, just wanted to get enough of a sense from those who he's been working with of what might be acceptable resolution. So he hoped he could do that in a day, but if it's 2 days, I don't think we should be shocked.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I was temporarily looking at these other motions, and so I came into this discussion in the middle. And I'm wondering who exactly is it that's crafting the motion? Is it the Citizens Petition Group, or is it the Board of Selectmen? I mean, you're talking about the amount that's going to be in this motion, correct?
Correct.
And they're asking for your approval, obviously.
Well, they're asking, we're trying to work together with them, so there's not a
Right.
long discussion on town meeting floor.
Well, but the thing is, you're talking about a vote on what on Saturday morning? Are they currently working on crafting a motion with a number in it, or are they just waiting to see what you say?
I have no idea. I wasn't on the phone call today.
Being that again, the FinCom and the citizens and the Board of Selectmen could maybe be agreeable to, just whatever it is, 90,000 pretty much ahead of time so that we could eliminate discussion. That was what we were trying to accomplish.
I think maybe Casey, Mike, obviously you're here. I remember a previous meeting, we said to Don, hey, if you have any questions about your motion and how that works, reach out to Mike and he could help you draft your motion. Has that happened?
Well, actually, I drafted a motion that you have, the motion that's before you without the number. So my anticipation is that the Board of Selectmen would read that motion. Hopefully, everybody is agreeable to the amount that they want, because that's the only question. I don't think there's any question with the form of the motion. I think it covers what everybody wants. It's just a question of how much you want to put in there, and you want to put in a sunset clause. Those are the two issues. And if you put in the sunset clause, when does it end? Does it end next year? Does it end in 2 years? So really, those are the two things. But from a procedural point of view, I'm hopeful that, I would expect that the selectman who is reading motions would be the one who would make this motion.
Well, I'd like to make sure that it's passed by the petitioners. So, because sometimes motions sound a little weird, and I don't want for laymen's that might have just heard it for the first time. I want to make sure that they have a good understanding of the motion, what that motion means, so we don't have the big discussion. So they understand ahead of time, and pass it by them, the words and then the number.
I'm not so concerned about having a big discussion at town meeting as I am that this particular article is not an article brought by the selectmen. It's an article brought by petition. And I think that unless the petitioners have agreed with the selectmen and the finance committee and anyone else who has a horse in this race on a number, then the number has to come from the petitioners, because they would not be able to amend the number. So if I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo and I can't. Okay, so if the motion made by the selectmen was for an amount that was less than the petitioners were willing to accept, they would be in a position of not being able to amend that number upward, because the motion on the floor is, for example, to say $50,000 or $80,000. But if the petitioners come in with a number, no matter what it is, even if it's 250,000 in the motion, then it can be amended downward easily. But I don't think that the selectmen or the finance committee in this particular situation is in a position of dictating the amount to the petitioners. I think that's the petitioner's call.
But Casey, the petitioner would have the right to amend the motion up to an amount not to exceed 250,000, because that's what the article is, so that all the town meeting members have been warned that there's going to be discussion about spending money up to that amount. And
Right.
so they would, they're not, if the selectmen make a motion, they're not limited to that amount. They can, if they wish, make an amendment, and if that amendment passes, then that becomes the main motion, just so long as it's not more than 250,000.
Right. Yes, you make a good point, Michael. But I think that if the motion is made by the selectmen, all the motions are being made by the selectmen. That's just an artifact of this particular meeting. But at least I think, I mean, I have no way of knowing this, but I think that the other motions that I've been looking at, they're in the form that the petitioner, which is mostly the selectmen, wants to have it. In this,
Casey, I think you make a good point. Maybe in this case, we asked Mr. Doak or one of the other people working with that group they make the motion, and maybe we have some kind of a agreement ahead of time with everybody, but they should, so that there isn't an issue of what you're saying, that they actually make the first motion. There's no reason they can't do that.
I think I think we might have just been like going under your guidance that the selectmen make all the motions, but I think it's important on this one that they do. I would agree with you, Archie.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
let
lost
them make that motion.
I lost my connection while I was, for a minute there. Can you bring me up to date with where we are?
No, I think there's no reason why we don't have Mr. Doak or one of the other people working with the citizens committee to make the motion themselves. Let them make the initial motion, and if if someone on the FinCom wants to lower it or whatever it is, let them make the first motion, so that it can't be that some people in the some of the voters feel like the article said 250, we wanted 250, so if there was some argument that they wouldn't be able to get that, then I think we let the petitioners make the motion themselves, not the selectmen.
I agree.
I would agree with that. I think
However, I hope we can come
I
to
think on a regular year, this would have already been taken care of. I think
agreement ahead of time, but maybe not.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
I understand your previous conversation about trying to be all on the same page so that we can avoid lengthy discussions and motions to amend the amendment. And yes, we don't want to get into that. However, if there isn't any conversation now between the selectmen, the FinCom, and the citizen petitioners, then it's highly unlikely that you're all going to come to some sort of a meeting of the mind. I mean, you'd have to be in conversation with the people, and I don't know if anybody from that group is on the meeting right now, but they should be part of this discussion. Whether
That's a great question. I was just going to ask that same thing if anybody was on.
Well, what Nathan said, and what John Whitten had said did seem to make an impression on the people that were listening. The two people from the committee that were listening this afternoon. It was not what they had expected, but it did seem like they seemed somewhat not enlightened, but that they did get the message that maybe this was the number they could think about. Did you get that feeling, Nathan?
Yes, I agree. I think that John laid it out really well in terms of a year-to-year cost, in terms of expectations, and explaining how what would be paid for by whom, and how it's really the second stage of the review that is really the most critical stage of the review, which will be more than 12 months away from now. And they seem to understand how an $80,000 over 2 years really made sense, as opposed to $250,000, which is a lot of money. And I would say so that conversation has started, and I think that we're trying to avoid having a lengthy discussion at town meeting. But if $250,000 is the motion, there's going to be a lengthy discussion, and I think people should be allowed to have it, because I think a lot of citizens are going to be frustrated that such a large amount of free cash is being tied up, and especially if there's no sunset clause. I'm a big proponent of sunset clauses. I think they're really important.
I don't think I got this clearly from them, but it seemed like 250 it wasn't a 1 year sum. It was something that they were going to carry on for, I assume, quite a while, but they had no planned amount of time for that 250,000 from what I gathered.
It was a project, whenever the project ended and they don't need it anymore, 3, 5, whatever the years are. That's what my impression is. And I'm not saying yes or no to that. I'm just.
I guess my feel, so what should we do now? I would say that we should see if Angus hears anything. Angus can inform us. We can't get into someone else's minds. We don't know what they're thinking, so we can't come up with a figure we can all agree on at the moment now anyway. So I think allowing them to make the motion, because some people want, the people that signed the petition are going to be saying, what happened to our petition? And they're going to say the selectmen changed it or the town manager changed it or whatever, and that's not the case. So I think that we let them make the motion, and then hopefully they would say, and we make a friendly amendment that we're lowering it. So that's the way I would leave it for the moment, and we can vote on Saturday if it helps.
But I would give them the motion so they have an understanding of it, and then the number's the number. I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I think I agree with Casey. Give them the motion. They're responsible for it. We've helped other petition articles before write the motion because it was so, it's new for people. So give them the motions. Tell them this is the way it needs to be. This is it, and we all need to have a number, and they're the responsible for the number. And then it is what it is. Right?
That's how I feel about it. I don't think that precludes trying to connect with them in whatever way is possible to try to iron it out ahead of time. If it's possible for the selectmen, the finance committee, the petitioners, anybody else with an interest in this, to agree on a number before the motion's finalized, that's the best of all possible worlds. But if the petitioners are not happy with the lower number that the finance committee and the selectmen would like to propose, then that's not a good situation because it is their petition. And incidentally, let me just, this is picking at nits, but we need to be careful here. An amendment to this thing, whether it's up or down or sideways, is not friendly. A friendly amendment is something where you've got a misspelled word or you used the wrong word. This is an amendment that would have to be discussed and voted on. So, and that's not a friendly amendment. Friendly amendment's just, okay, we'll fix it. But I really feel like it's important to do exactly what Glenn just said. The responsibility for the wording of the motion lies with the petitioners because it's their petition. And if people can connect and smooth this out ahead of time, that's great. But if not, it's their petition.
Okay, are we all good on that? Rick?
Yeah, I'm fine at this point. I withdrew my motion, and we'll. Sounds like we need to do as you had suggested, which is to try to communicate with Angus and understand what feedback we can get from the petitioners, and hopefully get to town meeting with a general understanding and ideally a consensus.
I would agree with Rick. So we go back to Casey's stuff. Did you get to read those, Casey?
Yes, I did. And I did look at it, and I don't see any problems with it. We're talking about the motions in the special town meeting.
Yes.
Yes. No, I don't have any problems.
I think we're talking about all of them, but yes, specifically to those because you didn't have them. So I think you made a
Right.
comment earlier that you didn't have any problems with anything else, but then you didn't have the special and you'd like to see those.
Right, and I for some reason, I just missed this. I don't know why. But I took the opportunity to go through it while you began the discussion of the petitioner's motion, and I read through the motions and they seem straightforward.
Archie, what is our plan, and Rick, what is our plan for these motions on Saturday, other than the second special town meeting, the petitioners thing? What is the plan? Who's going to read everything?
I don't know. I suppose we could just draw straws and the short person gets to read them. We just have one of us read the motions.
Rick, do you care?
No, I don't care. And if I end up drawing the short straw, I'll be happy to read them. So,
My understanding is that the gazebo area will have one selectman who'll be reading the motion, and then one FinCom member will be reading the recommendations of the Finance Committee. And that way, so for all the motions, except obviously for this last one, it will, the KC will turn to the reader, the selectman reader, to make the motion.
Correct.
And you want to do that for the annual and the special? Maybe break it up and bring somebody else up just to have a break. I don't know. I'm not looking to make it more difficult. But
I think if we just keep the same process going, it will both expedite the meeting, so we won't have to wait for people to go back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. And also it will have the advantage of being comfortable after a while. People will understand it. And I will say at the beginning that normally we would have various people making motions, making the main motion anyway, for, depending on who brought the article or whatever. But in the interest of expediting the meeting, we're having the selectmen read all the motions. But that doesn't mean that these are all motions that reflect the selectmen's point of view. The selectmen's just reading the motion to put it on the floor. And then we'll have the normal discussion that we would have. And similarly, the Finance Committee, they usually have a number of different people who speak to the various articles. But once again, in the interest of social distancing and keeping things moving along, a single member of the Finance Committee will be giving all the recommendations of the Finance Committee, but it is the recommendation of the entire committee, not just that one single individual. But I think it's up to me to make it clear that, this is a departure from our normal way of doing things. And the reason for it is to move the meeting along as expeditiously as possible.
Casey, this is Nathan Kelly from the FinCom. Can I ask you a quick question, please?
Sure.
Last year at annual town meeting with the school and a number of things, in the interest of time, there was a motion made where we actually stopped reading all of the FinCom rationales. Is that something that we might consider as well?
I would suggest, I think the FinCom, especially on moneyed articles, is a very important part of town meeting. I mean, that's to me, that's your whole reason for being, is carefully consider all of the proposed expenditures and recommend to the town. But I think sometimes they get a little bit long-winded. So what I would recommend is that you keep them brief, but make them clear so that people understand what your reason was without going into a lot of detail.
Typically speaking, what people will do is just read what has already been written. And that's why last year we did cut that so we could move more quickly.
Yes.
It's not to say that we didn't read any of them last year, because I remember specifically reading the school one myself, but at some point after that, people wanted to move along more quickly, and we did that by skipping reading them.
Well, I think you're going to have to use your judgment on that. I wouldn't want to just completely skip the FinCom recommendation. I just think it's too important. And
Okay.
so, you know, so you need to weigh in on the articles, but you don't need to necessarily read the whole thing from your booklet. If you can summarize it in such a way that you make your point and it's clear what your thinking is without reading the whole thing, that's what I would recommend.
It'd be nice to try to keep a little bit normalcy to unnormal situations. So people do look forward to those FinCom recommendations.
They do, and they pay attention to them. So I think they're very important.
I think, Nathan, especially for if we perhaps will have some new people there, they will definitely pay attention to what the FinCom is saying, even if it's only a couple of sentences.
That's fine. I certainly wasn't trying to get out of our job or anything like that. We take our role as an important role. I just was saying, in the interest of time, we're trying to streamline the process across the board. I was just trying to say it might be another way we could do it and see if that was something we might want to consider. But we'll do our best. I don't think anyone knows that we are having only one person read yet. So that's going to be an interesting discussion amongst us to decide who has to do all of that.
Try to keep the FinCom recommendation. Think of it as you're putting it on Twitter, so it has to be very concise. Okay, are we good? Can we move on? Tomorrow night's, for what we will hope, we'll make everyone more informed, ask less questions at town meeting. Will someone please explain the septic loan revolving account to me? I'm going to ask that to somebody. So
Good luck.
So we're going to have, I guess, I haven't thought too much about it. Angus, how were you envisioning it? Would we have a little presentation first, or just immediately open it up to questions from people in the town? What do you think we should do?
Well, I'm totally open to suggestions, and I want to make sure people are clear. This was really, this is an idea that came from a lot of different sources. I would definitely credit Casey as being the prime mover on making this happen. And I think it's great. I think it's really, really important. We, I think, put together a nice mailing that hopefully everybody got over the weekend. And, but I will say it's been a little bit we've been a little bit pressed for time putting this together. And we got the word out just kind of at the last minute. That was not by design. It was just a function of everything else going on. So in terms of the format, I think I'd envisioned kind of maybe an open forum with questions and try to keep it somewhat in order of how things appear in the warrant, so we don't bounce around too much. But that's just my thought. I haven't talked to Casey about it, and I think that as moderator, I'd very much like to hear what your thoughts are, Casey.
Well, I think at one of your previous selectmen's meetings, I was asked to prepare a little bit of a preamble, brief, but just a few remarks at the beginning of the session to explain how town meeting works, because there may be, there usually are some people who aren't regular attendees at town meeting and won't understand necessarily how it works, and may not even understand what's the big deal about the questions. And of course, you all know that the big deal about the questions is that they can end up bogging down the meeting terribly. And with this format that we have for the meeting, with people spread all over the place and not the whole finance committee and the whole board of selectmen up in the front the way they usually are, and all the town employees who are just right there to answer all of these questions. It could prove to be very time consuming and hard to handle if we had to have people asking a question and then looking around for somebody to answer the question and then having the person answering the question find a microphone. You can just imagine that this could be a very tedious situation. So I will prepare a few remarks to say up front about how town meeting functions and what do I mean by a question and that kind of thing. And then I like the suggestion, Angus, that we kind of go through article by article, which might spur people to say, oh, yes, I don't understand exactly, you know, what is the septic system revolving account? Or, you know, what is the, we always have the one with the retirement accounts and, you know, they're just these.
How much time do we plan on committing to this? Because that would be, you know, kind of in a fast thing, but kind of like have a little mini town meeting and, you know, but move it along and just say, does anybody have any questions out there about that article or whatever? And then
We could do it that way. I mean, I have no idea how many people are likely to.
how are you going to handle the line item budget again? Because I think we have the articles pretty much down. We haven't had much talk about line item budget. That might be one that, is it going to be the same way you always do? But I thought you were going to do it different. That one, we might want to spend a little extra time on tomorrow night because I think we got the articles down.
I'm doing it a little bit differently and in the interest of saving time. So every town does things on the line item budget a little differently. It's kind of amazing to see how many different variations you can find on that theme. But in some towns, the line item budget is actually, the motion is actually made by somebody from the finance committee to approve the line item budget. The way we do it traditionally when we're having the meeting in the annex is sort of similar to that. The finance committee doesn't officially stand up and say, I move the line item budget. But what I say at the beginning is I'm going to read the lines and the motion on the floor will be the finance committee recommendation, which is essentially saying that the finance committee is making these motions. And then we have discussion and whatever. Well, it takes quite a bit of time to read out every line and say the finance committee recommends blah, 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 blah. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say the motion on the floor is to approve the line item budget. That's before you approve the finance committee recommendation. I will read the number, only the number of each line. I think I'm also going to read, because we have it broken down into categories. So I think I'll also read the category and then say line 1, line 2, and read them slowly enough that people can call whole, but not read the whole line, not read the whole amount. Refer people to the handbook, the finance committee handbook, where the numbers are written in there. And if someone wants to discuss any of the individual lines, they still call whole the way they always did. The only difference is that I'm not going to stand there and read every single line and the finance committee recommendation. I'm just going to say, under the Board of Selectmen, line number 1, pause. Line number 2, pause. So people, that's why it was important that people familiarize themselves with the line item budget ahead of time. So they'll know if they want to pause. Frequently, if you'll remember, when we have the normal approach, when we go through the line item budget, so many of the holds are actually just questions that occur to people as we're going through the line item budget. And they'll all of a sudden somebody will say, well, wait a minute, how much did we pay for the cruiser in 1965? You know, it's those kinds of.
If there's big percentages, you know, if a line kind of has just hypothetically like a 17% increase or a 40% increase, is generally, that's always a hold.
Right. So if it works, if people, and I think it will, because when we do the line item budget, I don't get the impression that, that people are just waiting for me to tell them what the finance committee recommendation is. They're reading along. They know what the finance recommendation is, and they're looking for, just like you said, Glenn, either big increases or, something that's new. Sometimes you reorganize things a little bit. Anything that ends up a red flag, like I haven't seen it this way before. That's where we get the holds.
So only thing I would say about tomorrow night would be then maybe, say how you're going to keep it short and sweet and say how because people on this West Newbury News, West Newbury people and stuff, but one of them actually messaged me and asked me if the information is out about a town meeting. I said, well, you need to listen tomorrow night so then you can give out information about it. So I think people are going to be looking forward to tomorrow night and maybe just explaining that the line item budget is going to be a little bit different. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how it works.
Yeah, was it, Glenn? Also, I wanted to devote a little bit of time, Casey and I and Wayne and Angus and the fire chief and the police chief, we met out there. We have a plan for how it's supposed to run. So I expect that there'll be a little bit of a kind of a detailing of, what we envision for our setup for the town meeting, where people will be, how the Board of Registrars will be lined up, where they can park. And so, to try to also educate people as to what to expect, where to go. And so, they would know, since this is, a little bit different, our venue's going to be different, to kind of give people an overview of what it's going to look like on Saturday.
That's it. That's a great point. I never even thought that's an excellent point.
Archie, I think you're muted, Archie. We can see you, but we can't hear you. Archie, I think you're mute.
I'm just going to ask Casey whether she envisioned just tomorrow night half or something. You want to be there answering every little question until midnight.
Oh, no, you're right. I think we do need an end time. Because we don't really have any idea how many people are going to be interested in participating in this, it's kind of hard to know how long we're going to need and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to spend too much time talking myself, because if people do have questions, I want them to be able to get answers from anybody that's there. I don't want to dominate the meeting, but I do agree with, an overview of what we're going to do, similar to the letter that we sent out, just an overview of how the meeting is going to take place, how it's going to be the same as all town meetings, but differ in certain ways. But I don't think that the differences are really substantive. They're just differences to try to make the meeting move along as quickly as possible to avoid, to protect people so that they're not exposed any more than they have to be. And also so they don't have to sit out in the hot sun any longer than they have to.
Casey, I would make a recommendation just right in the beginning that you make an announcement that all the information is on our town website, and you urge people to follow along, because we might be taking it for granted that they have a finance committee booklet in front of them or something like that, because people might not even know what we're talking about, but come in and say, hey, listen, this is where the information is. You need to follow along.
Mm-hmm.
That might help.
Angus, where's the easiest place for people to find the FinCom booklet?
The FinCom booklet is in the links on the FinCom webpage in the upper left. But it's also, if you go to the town calendar right on the homepage of the website and you click on June 27th, the town meeting event pops up. And that event, we've posted links to all 3 warrants, the FinCom booklet, the moderator's declaration postponing the town meeting, and some other related materials. So that's the single best information for everything town meeting related is right from the events calendar on the town homepage for June 27th.
Angus, Wendy Reed asked the question of, since we're not going to have town, reports from committees, could committees make their reports tomorrow night? I think it would be fair if they have some committees want to basically talk about their articles. At that meeting, that would be fine with me. I just don't know if we'd have enough time for it all. But I think we had talked about that originally, about giving boards and committees an opportunity to basically give a report, at least discuss their articles, since we won't be able to do that, at the town meeting like they usually would.
We did discuss that, Michael, and do you know off the top of your head, I mean, I'd have to go through the warrants, how many articles there are that are potentially in that category, that there might be somebody who would be giving a report if we were going to have reports?
I assume that the Open Space Committee and perhaps the Conservation Commission would definitely want to give a report on the purchase for the Middle Street property, for the purchase of the conservation easement and their recommendations on it. So that's one that I think would be there.
How about the playground?
And the playground would be another one that someone might be interested in basically giving a report on. Yeah.
I think
Third one, Mike, is the Energy Advisory Committee's recommendation on the electric vehicle charging stations. I know that they've just earlier today posted a one-page informational handout on the town website that they'll be having hard copies of that.
I think it's a great idea, but now we're putting these committees, these people who might want to have done it before, and they might not be ready.
Right.
I think it's great,
I agree.
but we need to make sure that we get the word out as soon as possible.
We had told people that there weren't going to be any reports.
Exactly.
Now we're changing the rules.
No, not at the town meeting. This is at tomorrow's.
Well, I understand that, Mike.
Yeah, but they didn't even
Things ready.
have the option of doing that.
Yeah, that's all my concern.
The problem is that we didn't give them any time to prepare anything.
Or they might have something already prepared. We don't know, but it just seems to be. And then all of a sudden, why did you do it to these people? And if you told us ahead of time, we would have had something. I don't know. It just seems to be a great idea, but we should have thought about it a week ago.
Right.
Hey, can I say something?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I could prepare something by tomorrow night. That's no problem. But it just wouldn't be the same as saying, giving a report on Article 13 and why you should vote yes on it. It's just not the same as doing it at town meeting.
I agree, John. I mean, without a doubt, because it's fresh in people's minds. It's, people are voting on it. You're telling them the information they might want to hear to vote for it. I would agree.
Angus, has any?
John, there will be no reason that after the motion, we're not going to limit someone from making a comment related to a warrant article. We just don't want a 15-minute song and dance presentation about said article. Someone concerned, the microphones aren't going to be shut off. We're certainly going to allow people to make pro and con comments about articles. There will be some discussion after the motion is made. We're just trying to limit it. That's all.
Okay, no, I understand that, and I was already planning to talk for 2 minutes tops. Maybe Vanessa Johnson Hall from Greenbelt would talk for 2 minutes. I was totally under the impression that that's the limit.
That's
For
the
a,
limit. You're right,
you know,
and
case.
it's in the letter that I sent out, the town sent out from me, a letter about what's going to happen at town meeting, and it says explicitly in the letter that there will be no reports. And that people will be limited to 2 minutes. That doesn't mean that, you know, only that you can only spend 2 minutes on each item. I mean, more than one person can speak. But the individual speakers should not plan on standing up there for 10 minutes and essentially giving a report under the auspices of you know, the debate. And the reason, and I think what we have to keep in mind here is the whole reason for all of this is that this is an unusual time, that there are risks involved with large gatherings of people, that we're trying to minimize exposure and so all of these changes in the meeting are really designed to make the meeting just move as quickly as possible, but still allow people to have discussion, debate, and feel that they were heard and that they heard each other. So it's kind of a sticky wicket, if you will. But when we have the regular meetings and we have reports, some of these reports go on and on and on for 10, 15 minutes. And it's very difficult to get people to actually be concise and just make the point and then sit down. And so that, I think we just needed to avoid altogether that type of report, which is really just a speech by someone urging the voters to vote for or against, whatever. And so it's the discussion tends to, I hope, move along more quickly. People get up, they say what they need to say, they sit down. So that's the reason for it.
So, final nuts and bolts thing about tomorrow night. Angus, how are we going to have like always, are we going to have everybody muted, or how's that going to work?
So I set it up with Zoom, which I've only hosted one Zoom meeting before, so I need to spend a little time tomorrow to make sure I've got the steering wheel. I did set up the default that when people join the meeting, they will automatically be muted. I don't normally do that in the eventuality that we do have, 80, 100 or more people. I thought that would be a good way to manage the background noise. So I need to unmute people. So I think I would start by, having the opening remarks that Casey will offer, and others that might want to offer remarks on articles they're sponsoring. I might like to say a couple of words about the proposed budget and the objectives that we were trying to meet with this year's budget. But then I think we would get into a moderated forum. I think the only precedent I can think of is the meeting that we had back in early April on the 40B, where we did have well over 100 people. And in that instance, we kind of went down. I would unmute a half dozen or 6 or 8 people at a time. It's not easy. This is not easy, but we'll do the best we can. And there's also the comment function, so someone can basically raise their hands electronically if they're accessing the meeting through the app or through their computer, as opposed to calling in. That allows them to basically wave their hand if they want to make a comment. So, but we haven't done this before. We'll do the best we can.
That sounds like a good way to go, Angus, because to manage that many people, we have 18 people on now. I can still hear background noise and people don't, mute. About the raising your hand thing. I mean, I mean, but the 40B thing that you did a really good job on that. But
That
I
one-
think the raising hand thing might be crucial, because if you have a lot of people on there, you know, you're going to hear people making dinner, everything.
Yeah, and we were very, nervous going into that one. We had no idea what to expect, and we were really pleased with how it went technically. And I think part of that, and I think we can expect the same tomorrow, is I think people are very understanding that this is a new frontier. And as long as we're doing the best we can, I think, people have been good about not over talking one another and so forth. So we'll try to keep that going.
And by April to now we're all pros, because we never heard of Zoom in March. Now we've been on like how many with our families, our businesses and stuff like that. Now we're getting to be pros from the big difference from April to June.
Our church had its annual meeting on Zoom and used the raise hand function to recognize people to speak, and it worked quite well.
All right, thank you. Hope everybody joins in tomorrow, because the more people we have that can answer the question, that's helpful too.
Right.
So we still didn't. So I guess there's no good answer. We'll end. Casey will end it when she ends.
Well, I think that, 2 hours would be max, I think, to keep going with something like that.
Yeah.
It may be that that the questions are answered and people are happy, and then, it'll end sooner than that. But I would say it starts at 6. So I would say we would end it at 8 at the latest. And if people still have questions, we can encourage them to contact people individually or.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Our next item is a report by the Massachusetts Office of the Inspector General, RE Selectmen Kemper, and money owed to the town. Because Mr. Kemper and I are both mentioned in the report, I would prefer that Selectman Parker chair this part of the meeting.
Thanks, Archie. And I apologize, my camera, for those who are on their computer, my camera for some reason seems to have blanked out, so I have no video right now. I'm going to start this by reading the introduction, the conclusion, and recommendations in a letter from the Office of the Inspector General. And after that, I would ask that in this order that Selectman Kemper and Selectman Archibald speak if they have something to say. But I know that this is it's a difficult issue. There's a fair amount of emotion behind it, and I want to keep this in control. I'm going to ask that we limit our comments to about 3 minutes. I'll have a little bit to say myself at the end, and then if anybody this is not a public hearing, it is a public meeting. Because it's not a public meeting or a public hearing, we're not required to take comments from the audience, but I would ask that if somebody has a comment and they're on a computer, that they put it in the chat and we'll try to address it. But I think it's important that we keep this all in perspective and in control.
Hey, Rick.
So,
I have a
yes.
Rick. Hi, it's Glenn. I agree with everything you said, and I'm glad that Archie did that. I just want to ask Mike, just to make sure it's official, do we have to take a vote that you're going to be, chairing this person, or it can just be like that? I don't disagree with it. I think I respect it, and I just want to make sure it's official, so nobody can say anything afterwards that we did it all the right way.
Since normally the vice chair would take over a meeting, but I don't think you've designated a vice chair for your committee.
No.
So I would certainly make a motion and have it as a vote.
I'd make a motion that Rick would chair section, I'm sorry,
Section E.
E, thank you. Section E of tonight's meeting.
Second.
Kemper, aye.
Archibald, aye.
Parker abstains.
Thank you. Sorry for that interruption, Rick.
That's fine. Thank you. So on June 3rd, 2020, a letter was received from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Officer of the Inspector General. Subject is Selectman Kemper and money owed to town. It was addressed to Town Manager Angus Jennings. Dear Mr. Jennings, the Massachusetts Office of the Inspector General, the OIG, reviewed allegations that one of West Newbury's selectmen, Glenn Kemper, owed the town thousands of dollars and that town employees had been unable to collect the money. The OIG found that Selectman Kemper accrued over $29,440 in debt to the town for his health insurance premiums. Selectman Kemper accrued this debt over 3.5 years. After the town removed Selectman Kemper from its health insurance, the debt remained unpaid for another 2 years. Furthermore, other selectmen knew of the debt but did not require Selectman Kemper to repay the town. After the OIG began its review, Selectman Kemper paid the town in full. That's the intro. There's then a lot of factual information as background. I'm not going to go into that because that would take me another 10 minutes to read. But I will read the conclusion. The conclusion is that the OIG's investigation revealed that by virtue of his position, Selectman Kemper avoided paying for health insurance premiums that all other participating town employees had to pay, in essence, giving himself an interest-free loan from the town. Further, the other members of the Board of Selectmen tasked town employees with collecting the debt rather than implementing a plan themselves. In doing so, the other selectmen did not consider the imbalanced power dynamic between these employees and Selectman Kemper, and they failed on their responsibilities to town employees and the town. The recommendations: the OIG recommends that town revise its policies and procedures to include clear and precise parameters for participation in the town's health insurance program, including policies pertaining to eligibility, payment, and consequences for non-payment. Moreover, the town must then enforce these policies. Further, the OIG recommends that the Board of Selectmen attend to training on fiduciary duties and the responsibilities of public boards. For instance, the OIG provides a free online training for members of boards and commissions. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The OIG appreciates the cooperation of the town of West Newbury, its employees and residents. If the town needs any assistance in pursuing these recommendations, fraud prevention programs, or other internal control measures, please do not hesitate to contact us. So that's background. And again, I would like it if people would, Glenn and Archie and myself, if we would each limit ourselves to about 3 minutes. Glenn, you're on. Is Glenn there?
I'm sorry, I'm here. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for doing that. I don't envy you, and I'm sorry that you had to do that. I'll be shorter than 3 minutes now, but if somebody makes a comment or something like that, I would like to have the opportunity maybe to make a comment back, not a cross-examination, or maybe just a clarification on the facts. Is that, we'll be able to do that?
Glenn, if there's a very brief clarification, but this is not going to become a debate.
Nope, I would agree, and thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I read the report. It did not sit well with me. Again, I am sorry about the situation that I put the town in. I am sorry that the situation that I put Joe and Archie in. They don't deserve it. I owned it when it all came to light. Obviously, I should have owned it a lot earlier. My fault. My intention always was to make the town whole. And the only thing else I had, and I'm actually sorry to the town. I have learned a big lesson, and if you can believe it, I'm a better selectman now for it. I have less than a year left. Like when I got up to re-election this time, this was my end game, was this term. So I will not be a selectman any longer. Going forward after the next town election. The only other thing I would like to say is that interest-free loan portion of it, I have asked, and I do want to pay that. So it's not an interest-free loan. So the town is made whole, and I'm willing. I think it's complicated and hard to get to a number, I was told, but I'm willing to pay an outside person if I need to get to that number because of the bankruptcy and because of legally, but it's hard to get to a number legally. But I want to make sure that it's on the whole number, as in I was not legally obligated to pay back $15-something thousand, but that was never my intention. It doesn't matter if I was legally obligated to do it. I wanted to, and I needed to. So that would be the only new thing that I would bring to the table tonight, that I really want to get a figure that I could pay that interest back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Archie, do you have something to say?
No, yes, I do. I do take, the report says what it says. I do take issue with the report in that Mr. Anderson and I let down our fiscal responsibilities. I've always taken those to the fullest. I respect every taxpayer dollar. And this whole episode has been, without question, the worst experience of my time as a selectman. I lost a lot of sleep agonizing over this problem. And I would like to, I have other things to say, but I don't want to go on too long. But one of the things that the report says is that we did not make an attempt to the money, which is absolutely, completely not true. In 2017, when we learned of the full extent of this problem, after me, again, agonizing over this quite severely, I went to Mr. Kemper because we knew it was going to be mentioned in the audit. This was in 2017. Within a week after that, Mr. Kemper had paid $2,000 towards the debt. I felt very relieved. I thought the problem would begin to be resolved. It was a very traumatic event for me to have to confront somebody over their personal finances. I assumed wrongly, in hindsight, that Mr. Kemper would continue to make payments. No more were forthcoming after spring, May of 2017. It's hard to work with someone and be their debt collector at the same time. My final we can discuss facts later, but I'll read my final paragraph. I had a lot to say here, but I won't get into all of it. I feel the report unfairly shed blame on Mr. Anderson and myself in an incredibly awkward situation. And it was an even worse awkward situation for town employees. And I'm in no way blaming them for us. Joe and I completely felt that they were in it wasn't their problem either. We tried to get this issue resolved repeatedly. We took it extremely seriously. In the report, it says we didn't do anything about it. Well, no one except me ever mentioned this issue in a public forum. I tried to get it resolved 2 years earlier. Mr. Anderson and I were castigated for not acting forcefully enough, while at the same time we were trying to treat a colleague with dignity. Unfortunately, he was ignoring us and the town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I say just one sentence, please?
One sentence, please.
I agree with everything that Archie just said. And I'm sorry, Archie.
Thank you. So I came in as selectman and fairly quickly saw what was going on. I just want to say that it was never clear to me what the correct resolution was. I'm not defending myself because I'm not the one I'm not implicated in any way, but I understand the difficulty that Archie and Joe Anderson were in, have some sense for the personal difficulty that Glenn was in. What's odd to me here is that I've lived in town now for about 24 years. And this is the second time I've seen an instance with a selectman where there was probably reasonable cause for the selectman to be forced to resign. We have no provision for that. I'm not asking that of Glenn at this point. But what I'm suggesting is that the town, in my opinion, needs to wrap its head around this issue. I don't know why it's happened twice in 24 years or in less than 24 years. And the circumstances certainly were different each time. But I think that, so I'm not pointing a finger, I'm not trying to take anybody out at this point, but I think for the health of the town going forward, we need to figure out a way to deal with inappropriate behavior on the part of a selectman and have a means to remove them if we believe it's necessary. And that's all I have to say. But thank you.
Rick, can I say another sentence, please?
Sure.
I respect everything that you said, and obviously I'm sorry that I put you in this light because you did have to handle it, and it was hard for you because it was hard for you to come in like deer in the headlights and you're trying to be a new selectman, and then, you have this thrown upon you. But one question I'd like to ask is, when you say 2, what was the other one?
Glenn, you've been around, you recall history, and I really, I don't want to bring that issue up at this point in time. In my mind, the issue is that there has been a recurring theme, and we need to figure out a way to avoid that happening again, or to address it.
That's fair. I just wanted this to be about me and my wrongdoing and how bad it was and what I've learned from it. I just didn't want to drag any, you know what I mean? People start asking questions about other IG reports, people asking questions about anything else. This is my doing. I own it. I'm a better person. I'm a better man for it. And I just don't want anybody else dragged into my problems that I had.
And
I didn't want about, and then tied in with me. That's all. You should, social media is a wonderful thing sometimes, and then it's death for a family. So I just want to make sure, I want to own it. I just don't want
Yep.
anybody in this town tied in, or any employees.
Okay.
And one more thing I didn't say earlier, Joe did come to me and Archie did come to me, both of them. So, and there are other non-factual things in that report. I don't want to debate it, but that is totally, totally wrong. They both came to me.
Hey, Glenn, we're
I'm
not
done.
going to let this run away.
I'm done. I'm done. Sorry. I'm done.
Thanks. So, at this point, do we have any questions?
Rick, we did have one comment come in through the chat, so I'll read that. I think it's a very constructive comment. It's from Tom Atwood. He says, hi, Selectmen. It would be helpful if the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee work together to come up with new policies that will rectify and prevent such issues in the future, with such recommendations presented within 60 days of today. The broader set of people from both boards is essential to get as diverse a set of perspectives as possible. Let's focus on fixing the problems. Thank you for considering this request.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
so do you think
So,
it's important, do you think it's important, gentlemen, that we come to some type of conclusion so we then give it to the people that, you know, and make sure that we do have the safeguards and stuff in place at a later date? You know, go with the recommendations. I mean, I think we already do. I think Angus, you know, has those in place, but it might be important for people, you know, full transparency to find, you know what I mean? I don't know.
We
I'm
have
not
put
talking
new policies in place, but maybe we review them and maybe we strengthen them. You know, those accounts are reconciled monthly now. That wasn't always done. You know, things like that. But maybe, you know, let's make it.
We should. Go ahead, Archie. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, let's see what we did do that last year, but let's, you know, reinforce it, go over it again, and get more input. Maybe we need more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we double back, look at the controls that have been put in place, make sure we're confident that they're adequate, and in the process, not dump more on Angus's lap. But it's important that we confirm, not just for now, but for the future, so the town is confident in the future that this can't recur.
And if I could, Rick, just take this opportunity that I think there are really two policy things that have changed since then, and I just would feel remiss if this part of the discussion ended without at least putting those on the record. I think they've both been on the record previously, but since the iron is hot, if you will. So the first is simply that anyone on health insurance who is not subject to withholdings, which is pretty rare. It basically includes elected officials receiving stipends, and that's a benefit, by the way, by virtue of state statute. That's not a local benefit. That's anyone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who is an elected official with any stipend whatsoever is entitled by statute to be on the community health insurance. So anyhow, anyone in that situation who is not subject to withholdings, where the town's taking out their share out of the payroll, will be removed from health insurance if they fall into arrears by 2 months. This policy was not in place in the past, which did, I would think, put staff at that time in an awkward and conflicted position where the account was overdue. It does put the staff members who were in place at the time, I think that put them in a tough spot. So that's something that's in place now that wasn't in place then. And secondly, under the town manager form of government, my position signs the AP warrants, the accounts payable warrants, not the Board of Selectmen. Prior to the town manager form, it was the board signing those weekly or biweekly warrants. So I think that kind of addresses the issue of, at least potential conflict of elected officials signing off on that payment. And it also, I think by nature, there's more communication between the treasurer collector and me as town manager, since we work together on a daily basis, than between the treasurer collector and the board of selectmen. So I think that not just in this type of instance, but in a whole range of instances, results in kind of the financial management having a better finger on the pulse of what's going on, both in expenses and revenues. And I'm not saying that as to say that I think that's complete. I just wanted to acknowledge that there are some things in place now that did not exist a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's great, Angus. Thanks. That's a dramatic improvement. So that's good. I see there are a couple more questions. So, and the first, were you all done, Angus? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, there's a question. Will Selectman Kemper seek outside help to calculate the interest owed, and when? I think Glenn has offered to do that. I don't,
Yes, I have.
Okay, and
I have absolutely no problem with that. Angus and I had a conversation about it, but it's one of those things too that because it's of the bankruptcy and because of whatever, and I don't mean to say whatever as I'm not making light of it. It's hard to get there from here, and the bandwidth that we have in town is not. So I'm offering to, pay somebody to do it. Get that number.
One thing about the interest payments that you can't. We spent a lot of time talking about it. It's not something we ignored. And one of the things is you can't charge interest payments retroactively on something if the vendor or the person whatever has not been informed of such the fine print beforehand. So you can't. It's very. That's sort of a violation of collection policies. You can't. It's going forward. You can add interest, but it's very difficult to add it after the fact. And this situation, there was no policy in place for such an issue. I don't think I explained it right, but it has to do. It wasn't.
No, you did. You did. So
because of an oversight, it was partly because of just the laws around debt collection.
I guess maybe a better answer to that question, Rick, is that if we come up with a number, I'll make a donation to the town. Legally, you can't give me a bill for interest because we got outside counsel to look at that. I think that's what Archie is referring to. So if we come up with some type of figure, I can donate it to the town in some way. And legally, to the library or to wherever, the food bank or free cat, just donate it to the town. Donate it to a gift account to the town. The town has one. Donate it to the Elliott Fund that help out people that are need help, something like that. So yes, Rick, is the answer to your question. In some way, fashion, or form, it's important to me that this town is made whole in every aspect.
Okay, thank you.
So that calculation, by the way, my office can definitely run it. Obviously, run the interest calculation. There are assumptions that come into play in terms of, when does it start to accrue and so forth. But we can build a model on that, and I can report back to the board in a couple of weeks on that, or just work it. I can anyhow. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for the more work.
And there's a question, what is being done to address the issue with town staff who had to work through this? This isn't part of the question, but I do know that it was traumatic for some of the town staff. So I'm not sure what the answer to that is, and if it helps for a selectman to follow up on that, I would be happy to speak with whoever. I know I've had a couple of conversations, but I'd happily take that further.
And
Nick,
I
I
would,
couldn't hear everything you said there. I'm sorry.
Okay, the question, what's being done to address the issue with town staff who had to work through this? And I know it was traumatic to some town staff. I had a couple of conversations with people who felt very put upon. And I would, as a representative of the selectmen who was essentially neutral, and, was not in any way in the picture at that point, I'd be happy to speak with them if that would help out.
when you say speak with them, I'd be glad to speak with them to you. I personally apologize to the people that I thought were affected, but I'm not going to say that I'm perfect in the sense that I might have missed some, but I'll be glad to. I have personally went to people and apologized because I know they did that. So if you want to organize something together, I have absolutely no problem with doing that. I actually would look forward to doing that.
Rick, I did have a note come in from Mike McCarron. It looks like the summary I provided a couple of minutes ago about eligibility for health insurance wasn't quite correct. So I would ask Mike, if you could tell those on the meeting what you emailed me in terms of the threshold of income necessary under state statute for eligibility for health insurance.
Yeah, elected official, and this is something that was changed in the prior to 2010, is that an elected official isn't automatically entitled to be on the town health insurance. They have to earn a minimum stipend or salary of $5,000, of which no elected official in the town of West Newbury does. There is a possibility that an elected official could be on the town health insurance if the Board of Selectmen votes to do it. In 2010, they did allow that, but right now there is no elected official who is on the town health insurance.
Thanks, Mike, and I apologize for any confusion I might have caused.
Okay. Thanks.
And we changed the stipends from $1 to $0 for that reason.
Okay. I think we should move on.
Okay.
Could I just say one more sentence because I didn't apologize to one person? It's very important to me.
Yes.
It's Angus. I want to apologize to him because he, through social media, I noticed, or people had told me that he was getting some flack over this. No, Angus wasn't any part of this. He came in and he addressed it in the best way that he possibly could. And we moved as swiftly, and he moved as swiftly as legally, and how a town works, and how all those things. So Angus had nothing to do with it, but only worked as hard as he could to rectify it. And I'm sorry if any light is bad light is shined on you, Angus, because you had nothing to do with it, but only worked hard to fix it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So, Archie, I will turn the chair back over to you.
Thank you, Rick. Our next item is on appointments for for individuals that are expiring this fiscal year. do we want to do, Angus, was the plan to do boards and committees, or we were just going to do the things like the police and fire and those things?
We've got them both are separately agended topics. So item F is the staff reappointments, and these are typically very routine votes at the end of the fiscal year. So what you have in front of you, and this is, I would refer you to the supplemental attachment that was emailed around earlier today. It's a one-pager. And so it lists 3 police officers whose term, based on prior appointments, would normally run through the current fiscal year. So for each of them, that would be a 3-year term with a request reappointment of the end of fiscal year 23. We also have reappointment of 1-year reappointments for 6 police reserve officers. In dispatch, we have a one proposed reappointment of a full-time dispatcher for a 3-year term, as well as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 1-year reappointments of part-time dispatchers. And then outside the public safety realm, we have reappointments of the ADA coordinator and the assistant ADA coordinator, each for 1 year. And we also have proposed 1-year reappointments of the DPW director, as well as Mike McCarron in his 7 appointed capacities, which I'm happy to illustrate if you would like. So
7's a lucky number. So is there any way we can, like we did those other, am I not? Yeah, I'm on. Like we did the other appointments, can we just refer to pages rather than going everything down them? You know, every name?
that would be my recommendation. I mean, I think, you know, we could.
Because by the way, you've done this extremely well by you know, your whole spreadsheet, and you have it darkened and how many years. So it's very clear on this piece of paper. So we can just refer to it. I mean, there is no ambiguity at all. And by the way, thank you for doing that.
I can just list the people really fast. Let's just do it right now. I would vote to reappoint Cena, Formey, and Ripper to a term ending 6/2023 in the police department. I would vote to reappoint Clay, Denaro, Brewer, Mastrangelo, DeCoste, and Torero to 1-year appointments ending 6/30/21 as reserve officers. I would vote to appoint Leanne Delp, a part-time dispatcher, and Ben Janelle, Matthew Joel, Serena Schwartz, Lorna Morgan, Barbara Bilbo, Nicholas Levesque, and that's the last one, to 1-year appointments as part-time dispatch people. Sam Joslin as ADA coordinator, and Wayne Emerald as assistant ADA coordinator, and Mr. McCarron to chief election officer, town council, chief procurement officer, records access officer, ethics liaison to the state, sexual harassment grievance officer, all 1-year terms, and DPW director Wayne Emerald and Mike McCarron, town clerk. How's that?
Second.
I think, Archie, the one that I think that you missed was Sam Holt, full-time dispatch. It was a little order on the list, but that's a 3-year reappointment for Samantha Holt.
Okay, right, okay.
Okay, I'll second that with that addition.
Further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
So are we going to do the boards and committees?
Any of the people that this takes a little more time to look at the requested appointments for boards and committees. I think one of these is extremely important. We need to appoint Dennis Lucy to the ZBA because we need to have people on that immediately. That's going to be our most important committee going forward for a while. So,
Archie, why can't we just appoint everybody as this sheet reads?
okay. I mean, but some people are actually requesting not to be appointed that are.
Yeah, but that's on that piece of paper, so they won't get they won't. I don't know if I'm just thinking of it because they're on there. They don't want to be reappointed, so they're not going to be reappointed.
Right.
But
okay.
I don't know if we can do it that easy. But I do want to have a broader discussion later on that we just seem to, since this is my last year and okay, this might be my last committee appointments because we're doing them later now. That we probably need to have a good discussion. We just seem to we seem to appoint all these committees and they don't have any really charges or any direction. Then all of a sudden, we appoint them and then they become a life of their own. And then they start asking town employees for support and then all this type of stuff. And then it's like, wow, you guys are the ones who appointed us. And then, to whatever, these ambiguous titles. And then they seem, whatever. I think we need to have a deeper discussion of maybe when and I'm not tonight, when we start appointing these things, and maybe start picking away at it through a year process, by next year, get it to it, have some type of charge, have some understanding what their authority is, what they're supposed to be doing, and, if support, if needed, who to go to, and not just start going to town employees then who feel then obligated to help them, but really is taken away from the work that's supposed to be getting done. So that's my hope.
I totally agree with that. And what if things calm down a little bit with the pandemic and everything else, what we wanted to do last year, and I think the committees often act independently of like two committees or four committees are sort of working on the same problem, and they don't even know that the other committee is doing a very similar project, or they don't know how their work relates to the work of the town as a whole. I wish that we somehow could have a overall town organization meeting on like a retreat or a weekend meeting or something. I hate creating more meetings, but I think it's worthwhile to see that the committee is a part of the whole, rather than its own thing. It's we want the committees to contribute to the town, not to be just an entity of themselves. I guess that's and it's the same thing you're talking about, but I think they might be more, see what's going, if they see what other people are doing and how they contribute to the whole, I think that's a valuable thing. So a lot of people work in isolation. That's the simplest thing to say.
I agree. But I mean, we created it over years. So we're not going to fix it over months. And I think Angus has already been working on it. So, but we just need to chip away even more and more and more and more and more.
I mean, we just we have committee creep. We keep getting more committees. We need fewer, perhaps. Okay. So Rick or Glenn, please make a motion then.
To regarding the committee appointments, you're saying?
Yeah. See, the trouble is some of them are 1 year and some of them are 3. That's why it's a little hard to do an all-encompassing one. Okay.
Yeah, but they're outlined. Angus has them outlined, right?
Yeah.
They are. The requested term of reappointment is all listed in the column, although as I review that, I see I didn't update it to the 30th of next June, so it's all listed the 15th. But I do continue to think that while it made sense this year with COVID, I think it makes sense every year personally to have appointments run through the fiscal year because it aligns with the town reports and the fiscal year. So
I would
if the-
agree with that. I don't know if we have to make that as a policy, but sorry.
Okay, I'll make a motion. And the motion would be to make committee appointments or reappointments exactly as shown on the sheets, which are section G and H. Oh, no, section G of the June 22nd Board of Selectmen packet, with the dates in all cases, the completion dates of the appointments in all cases extending to June 30th instead of June 15th of the same year as shown in the packet. And Mike McCarron, please, if that seems like an inappropriate way to make that motion, let me know. Let us know.
I'll wait
No,
to second
no.
it, just in case you have to change it.
These appointments.
No,
that-
I would just add that you're referring to the fiscal 2020 Board of Selectmen appointment list for FY 21, working draft 6/19/2020. So that's the title of the document you're referring to.
Okay.
Okay,
So
I'll
I
second
will- Okay.
With that added.
And I'll accept that addition.
Discussion, Archie, I think you had a question that you didn't like that.
Well, yeah, okay, a couple of the appointments are, for example, Nathan Kelly, he's the FinCom rep to the Capital Improvements Committee, but that has to be, that's not an honor, that's a.
Yeah, that's
a
voted by the committee.
To put him on that, so a couple of these are not valid.
Well, then we just say, then what's applicable? Because that's not applicable because they have to, all the committees have to give the appointments to those type of ones.
Correct. To the ones where one committee goes to another committee, yeah. I'm looking
Yes.
for another one. Where is the CPC? Okay. Okay, well, that's just got Rick, okay. All right,
This was my suggestion to streamline it, sorry.
No, but we're getting there, okay. With those exceptions, all in favor?
Kemper, aye.
Archibald, aye.
Parker, aye.
So, now we want to designate the selectmen's representation to the different committees. Rick, are you on CPC? You're on CPC, correct?
Correct. And also on capital improvements.
Advisory too. You want energy advisory?
Yeah, also energy advisory.
I'm on the investment policy committee, and I think that's it. Glenn, has the makeup of the school building committee, is that still functioning, or is it changed, or what's happening with that?
No, it's still functioning. I mean, I'd like to stay on it if that's okay, but if somebody else wants a crack at it, do it. I don't want to be a hog.
No, I don't want to do that personally.
Okay. I mean, is everybody happy with what they're doing?
I am.
Well, Rick, I mean, Rick, you're new, so you might want to move around a little bit, or what? I mean,
I'm good for now, and next year there'll be a change on the board, and I'll
yep, on the selectmen. So,
I'll probably do something else now, but I'm at least I'm up to speed on the capital improvements and CPC at this point, so I'd be happy to stay on. And the Energy Advisory Committee. I'm not officially the Selectmen's rep for the Energy Advisory Committee because that isn't a defined Selectmen's rep. So I'm just a member, like anybody else.
just a side note on that, Rick, it's good because what you said about up to speed, especially like on the CPC, in the early days, everything changed every year and new members. And then it took half the year for everybody just to get up to speed to understand because it was so new. So it actually is good to have some type of stability and not changing it so quick.
Yeah, I agree with you. It took me a while in both cases, the CPC and the capital improvements.
Okay, I would make a motion to nominate Rick Parker to be on the CIC and the CPC, Glenn Kemper to be on the school building committee, and
Well, hold on, no, because some of us have to abstain. Let's do Rick first.
Oh, okay, good point. Okay.
I'll second that with Rick.
Glenn, you eye on Rick?
Yeah, he seconded it with Rick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm I. I'm sorry, I'm I. Sorry.
And I abstain.
Okay. I would nominate Glenn Kemper for the school building committee, and is the cable advisory still going?
Yep,
or
still going.
I mean, is it? Do we need to do that one too? Okay.
Yep.
What else?
That's it.
And then I would nominate Archie to be on the investment advisory committee.
Second. Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Okay, I'm voting on Glenn. Rick, you have to vote on Glenn.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought, yes, sorry. I losing track of this. Sorry.
Okay, we're good on those. Okay, Angus, you want to Article I?
Sure. So this is a continuation of a discussion that started a few weeks ago, but really, in a way, has started 2 years ago when my tenure began. And so Rick had asked that it be kept on the agenda, which I appreciate. I think it's a very, rich topic for discussion. I don't know how far we really want to get tonight, starting at this hour. But I think it kind of aligns with what the board was talking about 5 or 10 minutes ago in terms of committee structure. One thing that you've heard me talk about, and I'll say it again, is I think reviewing that would be totally in order, and doing so in conjunction with a review of staff structure, I think would be really helpful. One thing that I've found when I started almost 2 years ago is in many cases, the lack of formal any kind of clarity on which staff were supporting which boards, commissions, and committees. And what I found in meeting with every one of the boards, commissions, and committees early in my tenure, and in some cases many times in my tenure, is in many instances there is no formal relationship. And so what I've observed is sometimes there's boards, commissions, or committees that feel that they're not getting the support they need. In other instances, I think some boards, commissions, and committees get a disproportionate amount of staff support. But what I would hear from some staff members is that they felt they were being pulled in a lot of directions without any clear management direction on what's their job. In other words, they, over time, really because they're nice people, had taken on more and more informally but over time, the informal became formal. There were things that they did once or twice that were now needing to be done regularly. And over time, the sum total of those demands were really starting to outstrip the hours that were budgeted for their position. So I think there really is a need for both a board, commission, committee structure and staff structure and how that all aligns that I think would be really, really good. I know my office has gotten into a situation where we're providing staff support, which I think really does go beyond what is sustainable. And we've done it and we've gotten a lot done. And I'd like to think that the help that we've given has been helpful. I mean, I think it has been helpful. But I also think that in some instances, my office, in some cases, me personally, have done work that if I step back and take a broader view, really ought to be something that, in my view, if the town is providing that level of support, it ought to be somebody's job, because that way you have accountability, and that way you also have a way to make sure that your staffing capacity matches up with the expectations that you have, and that you're not having a situation where public officials, whether elected or appointed, are making commitments that rely on some number of staff hours to actually honor without a connection with management. Because then you get to a situation where people are juggling too much, trying to do too much. And I'll say this, by the way, as someone who gets a lot done and over my career has gotten a lot done. So it's not about not wanting to get things done. It's about wanting to make sure that when we make a commitment as an organization, that we have the resources to see it through, to do it right, and to do it to its completion, and to put in the hours it takes to do it right, rather than taking on too much when you get to the point where there's no amount of hours that will allow you to keep up, and then you're juggling things and you're scrambling and you're always behind, and that's when mistakes get made and things get missed. And that's really what I've seen is I think we're trying to do too much. We do not have the manpower to do what we're doing. I think we've been reasonably successful, in some cases very successful, but I think there are other things that have suffered, including in some cases people's core responsibilities. And I certainly include myself in that list, where sometimes the demands of the town manager portion of my job directly undercut my ability to do the finance director part of my job. Just because of the nature of the job, I just don't have the time to put in 6 or 8 hours a day on finance stuff. So you've heard me say all this, but I think it is a real issue, and I think there's some I think we just need to have a more comprehensive and inclusive conversation as a community about what level of service we're looking to provide, what level of service people expect, what does that take, and are we properly resourced? And if we're not, one of two things happen. We either have to increase our resources, or we have to reduce our expectations or the commitments that we're making. So what I've told the board many times is my office can do anything that you want us to do, but we cannot do it all at once. And so I think that concept of saying something is important, but it's not urgent, is a really, really important distinction to make. And I think once we get through this town meeting and what by any measure has been a really extraordinarily challenging time, not just locally, but for the entire country and the entire planet, that's kind of highlighted these last few months. It was tough before that, but I think if there is a breaking point, I think there have been times where we've come right up to it in terms of just keeping the ship afloat on a day-to-day basis. There's a point at which it just becomes irresponsible to continue to say, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that. And there's just not the time. So, So, you know, I think coming out of town meeting and with the beginning of the fiscal year is a great opportunity to look at how can we get the boards, commissions, and committees together and have a more unified work program that is actually acknowledges that there are limits to what can be done in the day, and that's not, you know, a matter of people not wanting to help the town or not wanting to do their jobs. It's in fact a matter of wanting to be sure that when we do our jobs that we can do them right, to do things right and not just doing everything under pressure, everything on, you know, on the quick. And so I think it's something we, you know, especially the Board of Selectmen as the chief elected official in the community. I think you all at this point have a really good finger on the pulse of exactly what I'm talking about. But I think in the broader community, I wouldn't expect people to know that. You kind of need to know the details of what does it take to, you know, finance borrowing, or what does it take to pay the bills and to do those AP warrants and the payroll warrants. What kind of hours does it take? And I think when you look at our staffing compared to what we do, you know, an area I'm very focused on is the finance department. You know, I think is really woefully understaffed for the day to day. And I think the staff that we have are stretched very thin, and myself included, as in my capacity as finance director. And I think if you continue in that, it's just a matter of time before there's going to be failings. I mean, it's set up that way. So I think we really need to turn the clock back a couple of years to the structure of government that was put in place, what's working, what's not, and have some discussions just on that, which is going to take. It's tough to get enough bandwidth in the conversation because there's so many other things happening every single day.
I'd just like to reiterate my editorial comment that I made a couple of weeks ago, that the town has been really taxed. I don't mean in the monetary sense, but it just in terms of resources and time and so many things going on. We think twice and then think 3 times and then think 4 times before bringing a new initiative that might be great. It's a grant for whatever. Maybe we just don't, unless it's really going to think, like I say, really think it through before bringing it to the town, that this is something that we absolutely should apply for. We'll get it. Well, it takes a lot of time, and Angus has a hard time saying no. So somebody has to say no occasionally. Remember what we are doing right at the moment. People forget there's a high school being $150 million high school being built in our town. That is going to take a lot of just time in just the paperwork related to things related to that. Just think about that. There's the 40B project. There's a lot of stuff that's already on the plates. This is like Thanksgiving plates. We don't need more stuff. I mean, everybody thinks that their little piece of the world problem is the most important thing for the town, but look at it in the context of what the town is doing. And okay, now I'll shut up. Okay, but Angus is right. We
I would
have
agree
to,
with everything that Angus, but I think people have to understand what's going on. And I think we should do this in a small way at town meeting, when we said that, you know, you're going to have to sign off to talk to Mike McCarron. You remember the backlash that we got? Because I don't think people we weren't trying to take Mike away from people. We were just trying to organize his day where we're looking to get a contract out that could be a $30 million contract that needed to go out tomorrow. and then 5 people come in because they're on the widget committee, and it could be a grant, and all of a sudden you spend an hour and a half talking to the person. And it's not a bad thing, because it's very important to those individuals. So I'm not making light of that, but it's a hard way or that same widget, sits down with Angus or calls him on the phone, and Angus, as a town manager, who feels that, okay, yeah, this person doesn't have any support in any other board or commission, and then he spends an hour and a half with them, and then he doesn't get to what he needs to get to. So he doesn't say no enough, because people think, for years, people just walked into places and did this and did that. I don't know. There needs to be more of a business type of running the place, but still the small town feel of being able to come in. And I don't know how we accomplished that. Years ago, when we made the town clerk, town council, as a selectman, we were afraid that people would just walk in and it would just take up Mike's time. So they had to actually sign up. There was a folder in the selectmen's, and the chairperson had to approve them talking to Mike. So at least there was just a little bit of, buffer there, rather than them just like walking in. And then that chairperson would say, hey, yeah, and Mike would go, yeah, have him come by tomorrow afternoon. I got something big today. I can't talk to him. That stopped just walking in and taking 2 hours. So I agree and one, I think we need to put on our front agenda, and I think, Angus, it was excellent. We have 2 years behind us now with this new form of government. I think we all can see what's working and what we can make better, and we should try to do that sooner than later.
I just thought of 2 other things we're doing. Giant water projects and the car post. There's multi-million-dollar projects that we're a little tiny town, and we're dealing with those. So
it's probably the most capital improvements we've done in one time. I was thinking of the water. I forgot about the car post. I was thinking of the water tower. Yeah, and then those are easy. Angus could do those in a half an hour, and then of course, not I'm being facetious. And then the regular course of business of coming here and making sure everything's running well, of making sure it's not happening. So we need to address it and make it better.
Yeah, I've spoken a lot with Angus about this, and I'm concerned about sort of our core finance aspects and our ability to to maintain ongoing functions at the same time we're trying to correct for errors stretching back in some cases years, and they're in the area of finance. I don't think we're adequately staffed, and I just don't think we have the bandwidth right now to even keep up with current reality. And I don't know the best way to fix that. We're a small town with limited resources. Is it possible? Is it possible to move functions around? Is there anybody who has time in another department currently that that might be able to be a contributor at some level in finance? It was interesting that that listing that you sent. I'm trying to remember what town it was. Was it Belchertown or something like that, Angus? It was
Hadley.
Hadley. Okay, yeah. They're a little bit larger, but not much. 20-30% larger than West Newbury, and I don't live my world comparing myself to other people or other organizations, but it was just kind of an indicator of how thin we are when you looked at their structure, their finance department structure. We have no redundancy at all. I mean, you don't want a lot of redundancy, but you want overlapping capabilities, and you through that you get a level of redundancy. Right now, if we lost one person, we'd be sunk. you know, and I think it's irresponsible of us to let that continue.
Well, I think that's where we failed, or we didn't go far enough with the town manager's quote unquote position. Because I think, excuse me, we've tried and had the theory of maybe some job sharing and try to work it out and try to move people around the building. But it seems like we get some pushback and we're not really sure who the authority is and the town manager aspect. Everybody thinks outside the building that Angus is the town manager and he's telling everybody what to do in the building. And I'm just keeping it really, like, not telling everybody what to do in a bad way. I'm just trying to keep it quick. But that's not the case, because you have a bunch of elected boards and committees upstairs. I don't know about downstairs, but that he has no really control over. So where we could be job sharing and getting more productivity and moving people around and a benefit for them, they become more valuable as employees. We don't have that ability. We've tried. So that's, we need to look at this manager's thing and realize where we've done well and where we can do better and really try to move that and change it.
Okay. I don't
Archie,
think we can solve any of these tonight. It's getting late.
No, we can't, but I do just, if I could just add like a 60-second kind of closing comment, which is on the issue of personnel, because that's really a core responsibility of mine in the Town Manager Act, is to oversee the personnel administration in the town. And I just want to be very upfront that it is really, really, really difficult as a manager to be a resource for the people that you work with if you yourself are absolutely under the gun every hour of every day. And I try to do that. And when people come to me or a staff person comes to me and they need a helping hand or they need some support or they just need someone to talk to, I'd like to think I always find a way, but it's suboptimal at best. And you know, you can't be all things to all people. And so I think that's really a core you know, flaw in the design, is that right now the workload is such that there is no slack, there is no downtime, and that has been since my first day on the job. So if somebody needs a helping hand, I do what I can to help, but there are any number of times that I myself put myself in that person's shoes and say, geez, I wish I could do more as a manager to help, but I've got this deadline and that deadline and the other, and I'm talking like 5, 6, 7 deadlines that day, every day. So it's you know, I cannot be as effective as I know I can be and as I have been in other jobs, not because I've changed or because I'm working less hard, because I'm certainly not, but because the structure is not designed to allow me to do some of my job as a manager or as a finance director, because you basically have a part-time manager and a part-time finance director and a part-time HR director all wrapped in one. So it's not just the organization, but I think on the personnel administration, I would like to be able to do much more. I'd like the personnel committee to be able to move forward with the initiative set out in the memo from last summer in your packet. But with that committee, for example, I'm the logjam because I'm their only staff support. So it's you know, I think finance and personnel, in my view, are two areas that really are strapped on resources without question.
Angus, do you have something to say about the bridge?
Yep, so we have continued correspondence with the mayor's office, and there we provided them a signed copy of the MOU on the bridge agreement. And as I think you know, the mayor needs council authorization to sign that agreement. And we've been notified that the council, this will be an agended item on the Newburyport City Council agenda next Monday, June 29th. And I don't know, sitting here right now, if that's going to be a substantial meeting other than simply a referral of the MOU to committee. My guess is it's going to be more like that, like a procedural step, and that it would go into committee process, at which point the more substantive discussions would happen. But we'll stay in touch with the mayor's office, and obviously we want to keep an ear to the ground, and
Angus, from
we
your
want to be represented there.
from your vibe, there would be no point in us attending that meeting then?
I don't know. I doubt it. I need to have that conversation with the mayor or her chief of staff this week. But my guess is it's going to be the committee meeting, the committee process. And my expectation, just from my own time working with a council forum, is that they'll refer it to committee. That's probably it. And then it's the committee that will really chew on it in detail. And that's where we want to be certainly present for that.
Are those committee meetings open to the public, or are they closed?
Everything's open to the public unless it's a executive session topic.
Okay, thank you. So if you could ask, I'm willing to go there, and even whatever, but if it's just going to be like, thank you very much, West Newbury, put this into committee, it might be worth it too. I don't know.
I'll see what I can
Go
find out.
anyway, just to show that we're.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think that Archie's saying, just go that, hey, that we're serious.
Mhm.
I'm willing to go
Are we,
if we get it.
are
if we
we,
get it done.
are we able to, are multiples of us able to attend, assuming we have no interaction at the meeting, at their meeting?
Yes.
Is it legal for us to attend and, to listen into their meetings?
We can go, we can get information, we can talk to each other. We cannot, not an open meeting, if we don't have, if we have a quorum and it's not an open meeting, we can't give opinion or debate. So I can't give you my opinion on something that, then you'll know when you're voting if I was going to vote yes or no on it if it wasn't an open meeting. We can go, we can ask questions, we can get as much information as we can can talk to each other, but we just can't give opinion or deliberate about it.
Okay, that's good enough. Okay, thanks.
Glenn, you're not supposed to talk to each other at a meeting. You're not supposed to have deliberations. The open meeting law permits a quorum of a elected body to attend another elected body's open meeting and participate, provided that there's no deliberation between the members.
Well, that's what I mean. We can talk. I can say, hey, Archie, how you doing?
Yeah, you
Talk
can't.
about the Red Sox game if there was one or something like that.
Yes, that you can talk about anything that's not in the jurisdiction of the board.
Yeah, we can do anything like that. We just can't, that's what I meant. We just can't have deliberation or I can't give my opinion. I can't just say, I'm going to vote no. It doesn't matter what they do. I'm voting no on this bridge. I can't say that. It'd be an open meeting law violation. Okay, so I wouldn't mind going anyway, just to show that we're kind of serious about this and kind of stick up for West Newbury in some respects.
Hopefully it's not like item 47 and we have to sit through the whole.
But they're participating remotely, aren't they?
Oh.
Yes, that's a great point, Mike. Yes.
Is that at least they have been. I'm on their website and they have, it's a web address, so it's remote participation as far as I understand right now.
That makes it easier.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
I'll have more information.
Okay,
I can email you.
The ZBA permit rules. I listened to some of that meeting, Angus, with John and the ZBA. So were they pretty much happy with John's comments and so forth, or?
Yes, the regs were adopted at their public hearing on June 11th. So we do now have updated 40B regs, which is great. The board did receive some comments, some very thoughtful comments, just a short time prior to the hearing. And they wanted to give themselves time to fully consider the comments, but they didn't want to not move forward on the draft that had been prepared because we thought it was a good draft. So they did vote to approve the regulations, but they, on the very same night, scheduled a second public hearing, which we'll send separate legal notice for. That's going to take place on Thursday, July 2nd at 6 p.m. And that's going to allow the board to consider the comments that were received, as well as any other comments that may come in. So I will be sending out the approved regs to the other land use permitting boards and committees to actively solicit any input they may have for that public hearing on July 2nd.
The thing that was in the packet, how much of that is new?
It's all new.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. I couldn't. Okay, got it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we skipped item J. My bad. Meeting minutes. I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 26th, 2020 and June 8th, 2020. There was one correction I saw. It was talking about the someone seconded and stuff, and I'll find what I was talking about.
Yeah, I'll second, but I also have a point to talk about. And
Go ahead, Rick. I'm looking for mine. Okay.
okay, so yeah, I've got to figure out which page, and I have the element, but these are long minutes. So it's the meeting minutes for June 8th. Page 66 of the packet, or page 13 of those minutes, where we talked about the warranty for the EV charging station. And at the end, it says total cost of $59.90. It's actually, it should say $59.90 per location, which works out to $11.98 per year per location. I just want to make sure it's clear. So, you know, over a 5-year period, it's a commitment of just under $12,000. You know, just $1,198 per location per year. So that's 2 times that $11.98 per year. I hope I didn't confuse that the way I just said it, but it just wasn't clear to me. And I hope that's not what I really said for the motion.
Okay.
We talked about it, and I said that I'd confirm.
But for clarity, why don't you email what you said, because it was still a little bit confusing what you said, Rick. Why don't you email it over to Angus, or email it to somebody what it really should be, and then they can double check everything, and if not, we can put it on a future agenda.
Okay.
And it's very, very timely, because in order to carry forward the board's intent is going to require a hold and an amended motion on the DPW operating budget. So yeah, Rick, if you can make sure that's crystal clear, that would be really good.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll forward tomorrow. I'll forward the or maybe later tonight. I'll re-forward the document. It's referred to as cellular plan and warranty pricing breakdown. This is from the vendor. And it shows the price structure, you know, and I'll be specific as to which one it is. But it's for a 5-year plan. It's 59.90 for 5 years, and that covers 2 charging stations at a single location for 5, you know, over 5 years. But I'll put that in an email and make sure you have it by tomorrow, Angus. Is that good enough?
Tomorrow's great.
Okay, great. Sorry, I guess I thought it was clear, and clearly it wasn't clear. So my apologies.
What was yours, Archie?
It was more of a typo, but it was talking about the MOU about the bridge. But
Why don't we put those on hold, since Rick's gonna email them over, and we can just make sure next time that we do
Okay.
it, unless it's really imperative.
yeah, no, it's late.
I was actually gonna say, these minutes have been done well because Archie hasn't done a grammatical correction in a while, but I guess it's coming up.
I don't have any particular comments about the holiday schedule item M. Anyone else?
No, looks good to me.
I mean, as usual, we don't want to discuss the day after Thanksgiving until a little bit later.
Which is fine. Yeah, if we can pin down at least most of them, that's helpful. It's just good to, I've always done this, you know, kind of once a year, because otherwise it just keeps coming up. It's just much more efficient to just look at it once.
Yeah,
Let's look at
absolutely.
it. Let's look at it once. Let's do it because people plan vacations around it. You know what I mean? So it's important just to do it once a year and not change it actually until we need to.
But we can revisit the whole issue of the Friday after Thanksgiving at a different time. That's fine.
There may not be any shopping, and who knows, you know. One thing I would like to, and this is Angus, for after town meeting in the summer when maybe there's a little more downtime. You had a spreadsheet delineating how we're doing on from quite a while on catching up with old minutes. So we should revisit that and see where we're at.
Yeah, we keep that, Jenny and I keep that updated on a current basis. And yeah, I'll send that around. Yeah, we're in very good shape. There were I think still 3 or 4 sets from the old days, and so there is still a little bit of catching up, but there's no longer a big glaring
Okay.
hole.
And the spreadsheet you showed of what's done and half done and what's not been accomplished, a lot has been done. So you shouldn't feel that nothing is getting done.
Well, and that was from November 2018, so I haven't taken the time to dust it off, but no question. I think what's telling about that is what were the stated priorities, and then what did we actually do? Because we tried to tackle those, but we also took everything new that came in as well. So
it's not all bad.
no.
And anyone else have things for future agendas? Again, we want to discuss the committee structure and stuff, everything like that, but let's let Angus calm down for a bit and not.
I mentioned that. I think that might be a year-long process. I just don't want it to forget, because we were talking about the committees at that particular time. This
Right.
is a process that we need to happen, and that goes to the bandwidth of what Angus was talking about. These committees will come in and then they expect services. And like, oh no, I need to talk to Mike, or I need to talk to Angus because we might have a grant. It's like, oh wow, where did you come from? I already had my day planned and now it's 2 hours. You know what I mean? It's that type of stuff that we need to really, really help Angus with and help our employees with.
I would ask, maybe Glenn, you know a little bit about it, or Angus, what is the town's responsibility related to inspections and so forth related to the school? Is that starting to be affected now, or is that still a ways out? Is the school ahead of schedule because of the closure? I'd be curious to know a little bit what's up with the school. Next time, not now.
Next time.
Yeah, next time would be a good thing. But remember, the building inspector has been involved with the plans and reviewing those plans and so forth and so on right along, just because there's no structure there. And I did ask that question.
I just wondered if it's starting to affect his workload and stuff at this point.
Okay. And I did ask the question if it's going to save us any money that the school closed. They didn't think so. But I was hoping. Okay. Make a motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Parker,
Kemper, aye. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a hard, thank you, gentlemen. It was a hard meeting, and thank you very much.
Thank you all. Good night.
good night.